Well, we have made it. The best time of year is here. March Madness has arrived. And so it's time to sharpen those pencils, dig in, because we have some brackets to break down. Who is in, who is out, and where the road takes us to get to sunny Tampa in 3 weeks. It all starts right here, right now, today. We get it all started on Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, friends. It is March 17th, 2025. Happy St. Patrick's Day. May your green beers be cold, and I hope you found your lucky charm that will help you and your favorite team survive the field of 68 and March Madness. I am Missy Heidrick, national correspondent at The Next, college basketball analyst. So happy to have you here today with us on Locked On Women's Basketball. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA, all uppercase, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, you can follow me at Missy Heidrick on social. Be sure to follow this podcast at Locked On WBB, and then come see all of my amazing colleagues over at The Next, www.thenexthoops.com. And that's where you'll find me throughout this coming weeks as we think about all of our coverage for the NCAA Tournament and everything you need to know about college basketball and beyond. Well, the 2025 NCAA Tournament is here. The brackets were announced last night. And so now it is time to do what we like to do. We get to nitpick at the selection committee, break down the overall bracket layout, look at the surprises of who is in and who is not. And then we have to talk about those 4 playing games that are going to kick off the tournament this week on March 19th and 20th. So let's start with those top seeds in this year's field and what their path might look like to the Final Four, and some other nuggets and some things that we have to think about. Well, we've got 4 top seeds, and I think it was never a question of whether or not these were going to be the top. It was going to be a matter of where they were positioned. UCLA in the Spokane 1 region, they were the overall number 1 seed in this year's tournament. South Carolina, they were the number 1 seed in Birmingham 2. A lot of consternation, a lot of questions as to what that was. After the fact, Chair of this year's NCAA Women's Selection Committee, Dorita Dawkins, said that it really came down to 2 things as they looked at a comparison between UCLA and South Carolina. And that was going to be the head-to-head between the 2 of them. And then also where they are in quote-unquote competitive losses, because that is a factor. It's part of the selection criteria that is on the team sheets for the committee. They point out the 29-point loss that South Carolina had to UConn. Now, if you go on social media, if you go into their website, you're going to be able to see some of the comments from Dawn Staley that she had to the media last night after the selection process was over. Thought that they had scheduled the way that they needed to on a national level at a complete high elite level to garner themselves and earn themselves at SEC, earn themselves a number 1 overall seed. They were co-chairs or co-champions of the SEC and then won the SEC tournament as well. Didn't happen. South Carolina is the overall number 2 seed. The 3rd number 1 seed in the Birmingham 3 regional are the Texas Longhorns. Madison Booker, the SEC Player of the Year, one of the super sophomores that you are going to see highlighted during this tournament. I think if you're Vic Schaefer, you're probably pretty excited about the fact that they got that 3rd number 1, because the head coach at USC, Lindsey Gottlieb, not at all pleased, and where they thought a bit of disrespect may be brought to the Trojans in USC, as they were the 4th number 1 overall seed in the Spokane 4. So that's what you're looking at there, folks. We do have one new wrinkle in this season as we think about this year's 2025 NCAA tournament. You're going to hear a lot from coaches, administrators, talking heads. They're going to talk to you about performance units. That's one thing that is new. We've been talking about it with the men's tournament for years and years. Ultimately, it's revenue with wins. And the more you win, the more goes into the coffers of your conference. So if you're looking at the Big Ten, they've got 2 number 1 seeds sitting there in their brackets, UCLA and USC. things line up, that's a positive for them in terms of the league. And then 2 from the SEC now, in South Carolina and Texas as those number 1s. Now, we know there's going to be upsets along the way. There's going to be some mid-majors that are going to get some of those performance units into their coffers. All the power to them. That's what this tournament's about. But just know, not only is there a host of folks not excited about how these ones shaked out, but also you're going to hear a lot of conversation about performance units in a positive, because it absolutely should be part of something in the women's tournament. And it hasn't been. So we are on that road of making it seem as though we are creating that equal platform. March Madness is what it should be all about. All right, let's talk about who the first 4 teams that were not selected as listed and as admitted by the committee: Virginia Tech, James Madison, St. Joseph, and Colorado out of the Big 12. I will tell you, I think James Madison is a massive miss. I think that team should have been in, no doubt that they should have been in this field. I think 3 teams from the Ivy League. I know this is not a popular opinion, but I don't think there should be 3 teams from the Ivy League. I believe Columbia and Harvard earned their way. Harvard by winning the championship, Columbia by getting themselves a regular season championship. But you've got Princeton in, and they are in that 10 slot, and they were ultimately, as admitted by the selection committee, the last team in the field. I believe that place should have gone to James Madison. I don't think that that was something that should have happened. I don't think there should be 3 from the Ivy. Again, I know it's not a popular opinion among some, but that's mine. I think James Madison got left out. I think it's a huge miss. And I don't agree with that. With that said, all the power to, excited for the Ivy League that they have that many teams in the tournament this year. Let's hope that they can perform to the level and not make it look as though that was a big misstep by the committee going in. We've got 6 teams that are making their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament. I'm going to tell you where they're from. From the Sun Belt Conference, winners of the Sun Belt, Arkansas State. The Northeast Conference tournament champions, Fairleigh Dickinson. Atlantic 10, George Mason. In the WAC, Grand Canyon University. You're going to hear a lot about Grand Canyon, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your hats on. A lot of movement out west there. Out of the Big West, UC San Diego. And out of the Coastal Athletic Conference, William and Mary. Congratulations to those 6 programs for getting to the NCAA tournament for the very first time. It's an amazing experience, something that all student athletes should have the ability and the opportunity to be able to do. So I hope they embrace it. I hope they love it. I hope they celebrate it. I hope they get in and they practice hard and they have great scouts, because they have opportunity in front of them. We've seen it happen. Upsets occur. They will happen in your bracket. There is no doubt about it. So just remember that. All right, we talked about those top 4 seeds: UCLA, South Carolina, Texas, and USC. The interesting factor in all of this is that the way that they line up, if these teams would find themselves coming out, you're looking at rematches in the Final Four if the seeds would hold. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, but I think it's a very good chance to have UCLA, USC, South Carolina, and Texas advance all the way. But let's talk a little bit about the number 2s. We've got in Spokane, number 1, that is NC State. Westmore squad really peaking at the right time. I thought they played fantastic basketball down the stretch, got themselves into the ACC tournament final. Westmore, the ACC Coach of the Year. I think that's a team you do not want to sleep on. Out of Spokane, 4 that would match up with USC if they got to the Elite 8. That would be the UConn Huskies. Paige Beckers on her last stand within the NCAA tournament. Can she get this team back to a Final Four? They've been playing great basketball. They're healthy. I think that's a huge factor for any team this time of year. UConn, they are out of that Spokane 4. You bump up to the Birmingham 2, South Carolina as the number 1. You've got Duke as the number 2 seed. Carol Lawson squad, absolutely. I think like NC State peaking at the right time. They win themselves an ACC tournament title. And I think that has been a great catapult. This is a team that is going to defend. They will keep you in the mud. They will bring pressure at you for 40 minutes. If you're not prepared, it is going to make your life difficult. Congrats to Duke to getting themselves up to that 2 line. Great late season performances and that ACC tournament title. And then the 2 seed out of the Birmingham 3 that would match up with Texas if the seeds would hold and find themselves playing 2 Texas teams possibly in that Elite 8 in Birmingham. and that is the TCU Horned Frogs. Mark Campbell's team, they won both the regular season and the conference tournament title out of the Big 12. Only his second year in Fort Worth. This is a team that has been built out of the portal. You're going to hear the names of Haley Van Lith, Sedona Prince, Madison Connor. They have jumped into this program. Prince and Connor a year ago, Haley Van Lith transferring over this past year. She was, I think, the best player in the portal when it opened this time last year. She ends up at TCU, the player of the year in the Big 12, the newcomer of the year, and they have themselves a 2 seed. So congratulations to the Horned Frogs. Now, are they ripe for an upset? There is no doubt. There is a way to be able to beat this team. You've got to put pressure. You've got to be able to handle Sedona in the middle. But they have a path, I believe, that they can advance, especially get to the second week, get into the Sweet 16. And then we also know it really just comes down to matchups. All right, everybody, when we come back, we've got to talk a little bit more about some of those other teams within this bracket that stand out to us, some games you want to keep your eye on. And then we're also going to really dive into those first 4 play-ins because we got to give those teams some love as well. First, a message from our friends at DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When a player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. So maybe after an epic 50-point performance, you celebrate by ordering whatever it is you want from your favorite spot, and it's delivered straight to your door. Need a quick lunch the next day with Dash Pass? You can get your favorite meals with the 0 delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, now you save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. And if you're thinking about catching the next game the next night, order your go-to snacks and your meals at a discount and get ready for more high-scoring action. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Hi, everybody. Missy Heidrick. Welcome back to Locked On Women's Basketball. All right. We've gone through some of the consternation. As I said, I am not a fan of the 3 teams out of the Ivy League. I think that is a misstep by the committee, but they went by what they needed to do. We've talked about the 1s and 2s. We've got to keep in mind where some of the others are and some of those other stories. We know that there's 6 teams that are making their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament, which is fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about where we see life if you are a 3 seed, for instance. Well, one of those ones that I find to be interesting, and I think a lot of people have circled, is where Notre Dame finds themselves. And I think that's one that I think is maybe surprised some folks. And if you listen to the underlying current about Notre Dame, it was the fact that they did not finish the season strong, both the regular season and the ACC tournament, that it wasn't necessarily where they were. And other teams were rising. Other teams were elevating their game. TCU, NC State, Duke, 2 out of the ACC, who I think then that pushed Notre Dame into that 3 line. They will be in the Birmingham 3 bracket. They're going to face Stephen F. Austin, the 14th seed in that first one. And then they would play the winner of Michigan. And then the Iowa State-Princeton game, which is a play-in. Those games will be in South Bend. The other 3 seed, North Carolina, out of Birmingham 2. They would line up with South Carolina if everything advanced. They're going to play Oregon State first. Oregon State with an upset and able to get themselves in at a 14 seed out of the West Coast Conference. Congratulations to them. Scott Ruick, what he was able to do, getting that team. They were a Final Four squad a year ago, folks. Just remember that. And with so much happening with the disintegration of the Pac-12 and what would happen to Oregon State, what would happen to Washington State, both of those programs, the Beavers rebounded. They lost so much of their roster, but they were able to rebuild. They get that tournament title and that automatic qualifier in at 14. They'll face North Carolina in Chapel Hill. The winner of that game plays Vanderbilt in Oregon, the 7-10. We bounce over to Spokane 1, and you look at those 3 games, and that one's I think gives us a little bit of interest, and that's LSU. They're going to play San Diego State as the 14. Those games will be Baton Rouge. The winner of that game will be the 6-11, and that is Florida State and George Mason. And then you go down to the next bracket, and then it's going to be a games hosted in Norman, Oklahoma. Congratulations to the Sooners, first year in the SEC, and they find themselves at a 3 seed. They are going to play Florida Gulf Coast as the 14, and then they will take on the winner of Iowa and Murray State. Murray State in at that 11. They win the Missouri Valley Conference regular season and the tournament title, one of the top scoring offenses in the nation. Keep your eyes on the Racers, no pun intended, because they can score. And Iowa, as a preventing, they have been in the Final Four. They're in at a 6 seed, one of 12 teams from the Big Ten this year in the NCAA tournament. Iowa will be traveling to Norman, Oklahoma. Then the other seeds of where people are hosting. Let's start at Spokane 1. That is going to be in Waco, Texas. Baylor at the 4. They're going to play Grand Canyon to start. Molly Miller, one of the hottest coaches in the country. Her name is in every P4, P5 coaching search right now. They are going to take on the Baylor Bears. The winner of that game is the 5-12, which is Ole Miss and Ball State. I had the pleasure of being on the call for the MAC championship in Cleveland over the weekend. Congratulations to the Cardinals, to Ball State. Allie Becky, one of the best players in the mid-major ranks all season. Conference Player of the Year. She was the tournament MVP. The Cardinals are good. Keep your eyes on them when they are clicking. We bounce down to Spokane 4. Also in that 4 block, Kentucky. Kenny Brooks in his first year in Lexington. They are going to host first and second rounds. They'll play Liberty as a 13 in that 4-13, and the winner will take on the Kansas State Fairfield winner. Kansas State not able to secure a host as they did a year ago as a 4 seed when they ended up losing to Colorado in the round of 32, did not advance to the Sweet 16. Can they do it on the road this year as a 5? Ioka Lee supposed to be back, getting close to 100%. That changes things. But this is a Fairfield squad. Don't sleep on the Stags, folks. They are good. Second year in a row, regular season title, conference tournament title. Congratulations to Fairfield. They are back in the dance, and they've got opportunity ahead of them in Lexington, Kentucky. We bounce over to Birmingham 2, and that pass is going to go to Maryland and to College Park. This was a surprise for a lot of folks. I think that Maryland was able to put themselves in a spot where they were going to be able to survive and get into the difference between the 4 and 5 line. As it was outlined by Doretta Dawkins, is that Maryland had more wins versus top 100 net teams. They also looked at their last 10 games, that they were trending in a positive direction, how they finished in comparison to someone like Ole Miss, who ended up at a 5 line. And Maryland takes that 4, and they are hosting in College Park. Ole Miss had more overall losses than Maryland when they matched up their schedule, but it seems as though those top 100 net wins, that was something that got them, plus how they were finishing the season. Maryland is going to be hosting Norfolk State in that 4-13 game. They will play the winner of Alabama and Green Bay in the 5-12. An SEC versus Horizon League team, the Horizon Tournament champions. Congratulations to Kayla Karius. She is back at her alma mater, head coach there in her first year, an incredibly veteran group for Green Bay. Do not sleep on them. I think that is going to be a tough matchup for Alabama. All right, then we go down to the last 4 hosts, the last host destination. That's going to be out of the Birmingham 3 bracket, and that is going to be in Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State in at that 4 in the Birmingham 3 bracket. They will have Montana State is who that they will host. That is going to be their first round game. And then the winner of Tennessee and South Florida. Interesting note about the Tennessee Lady Vols. Kim Caldwell in her first year there. They're in at a 5 seed. Tough draw to be able to go on the road to Ohio State if you can advance and get to the round of 32. But the Tennessee women's basketball program has appeared in all 43 NCAA Division I tournaments. Talk about tradition. Talk about consistency. Maybe a couple years in there when there was a coaching change and Tennessee was on the bubble. Not on the bubble this year. They were hoping they could push themselves into a host. Didn't finish strong in the SEC tournament. Can they regroup? Can they kind of put everything back together? We will see. A tough task ahead if they want to get to the Sweet 16. They're going to have to go through the host school in Ohio State Buckeyes. All right, a couple other games to keep your eyes on. We always know 8-9s, so tough to pick. But yet I always find it's a little bit like college basketball purgatory, because if you win, congratulations, you have to play the number 1 seed on their home court. However, let's give these teams their due. Up in the Spokane, number 1, the 8-9 game, Richmond versus Georgia Tech. Richmond gets in as an at-large, even though that Atlanta 10 bid was stolen away from them because they were beat. But that is a big win. Congratulations. George Mason is in from the Atlantic 10. Richmond is in as a at-large. The other 8-9 game in the Spokane 4, which would take on the winner of USC, North Carolina, UNCG. That is Cal and Mississippi State. An ACC team, Cal, out of, which I know is crazy, out of the West Coast against Mississippi State out of the SEC. Sam Purcell, his team is still dancing. They've got the best viral videos. You go over to Birmingham 3, and that is Illinois and Creighton. Congratulations. They are in at the 8-9. Illinois is the 8, Creighton is the 9. I've got a note about the Creighton program. Creighton, they are just one of 6 schools to have both their men's and women's programs in the last 4 NCAA tournaments. Congratulations to the Creighton Blue Jays, and just the culture that they set for both their men's and women's programs. Creighton is a number 9. If they're able to knock on Illinois, then they would take on more than likely Texas in that one. And then up to Birmingham 2, the winner of the South Carolina Tennessee Tech game, more than likely the Gamecocks on their home court. They would get the winner of Utah as an 8 and Indiana as a 9. All right, when we come back, the tournament starts in earnest on the 19th and 20th this week with the play-in games. We're going to break down those 4, tell you who's who, and it'll give us our first glimpse of just this outstanding field of 68.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Hi, everyone. Missy Heidrick, welcome back, and thank you for joining us here on Locked On Women's Basketball. We've been breaking down brackets, talking about some games and things you've got to keep circled. As I always say, the 8-9s, those are a toss-up. So difficult because those teams are going to be evenly matched. So you really can't go wrong in some of those. Other games to keep your eye on, I think those 7-10s are always ones that you have to keep notice of. Spokane 4, one that really strikes my interest. Oklahoma State as a 7 and South Dakota State as a 10. You've got the Summit League champions who were undefeated in conference play and then ran through the Summit League tournament in Sioux Falls just a week or so ago. The Jackrabbits will take on the Cowgirls. That game will happen out in Storrs, Connecticut. The winner would they will take on the winner of UConn, Arkansas State. More than likely the Huskies, but a big matchup there. I like that 7-10. Another 7-10, Michigan State and Harvard. Harvard in at the 10 because they won the Ivy League tournament. Michigan State out of the Big Ten. I think Robin Freilich has done a fantastic job there. That is going to be a tough game. I like Michigan State, even though one of the best players and newcomers in the nation, Harmony Turner from Harvard, keep your eye on her. She's bound to have a really good day in the NCAA tournament. We bounce over to Birmingham 2. The 7-10 game there is Vanderbilt, Oregon. Winner would more than likely take on Duke. That'll happen in Durham. I think the Ducks have found a way to kind of get their footing. Their roster looks very different. No Deja Kelly as they had a year ago, but they are back in the tournament in their newfound home of the Big Ten, one of 12 teams from that league that is in this year's NCAA tournament. Shea Ralph has done a great job at Vanderbilt, putting themselves in a position to be an at-large team out of the SEC. They had some big wins. They've got one of the best freshmen in the country, and Michaela Blake, she can score. You've got to figure out a way to get her stopped. Does Oregon have an answer for that? To be determined. And then the other 7-10 game out of the Birmingham 3, that is going to be Louisville and Nebraska. That game will happen in Fort Worth. Winner will take on TCU. More than likely, who's there as the 2 seed and the host. The Louisville Cardinal in at 7 out of the ACC. They had an up and down year, ranked, unranked, as did Nebraska. But Nebraska has really rebounded, I think, this year because they had some injuries. They're out without Natalie Potts, who was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year a season ago. She goes down with an injury early. They were able to kind of find their footing and regroup. Great freshman in Brett Prince. I'm a huge fan of Alexis Murkowski out of Nebraska. I think she's a double-double machine and has been fantastic in Big Ten play. I think that is a very reasonable, quote-unquote, upset if the Cornhuskers to knock on Louisville. And oh, just by the way, a little bit of tidbit, and thank you to my good friend Matt Coatney, who has been a guest here on Locked On Women's Basketball with me. Head coach at Louisville, Jeff Walz, former assistant at Nebraska. All right, everything is going to kick off. These are all Friday, Sunday, Saturday, Monday brackets on the women's side. However, the first games start on the 19th and 20th of this week. So let's talk about the first four and these play-in games, because I think that's really interesting. All right, the first one that you're going to find on the 19th, that is going to be the play-in game out of Spokane 1. The winner of this game is going to take on the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, UCLA. UC San Diego versus Southern. Southern out of the SWAC, they were 20-14 this year. UC San Diego, 20-15. We already mentioned them. First time ever in the NCAA tournament out of the Big West. Heidi Vanderveer, this is her 13th season there at UC San Diego. Yes, her sister, her big sister, is Tara Vanderveer. So while Stanford is absent from this year's NCAA tournament, even though Tara Vanderveer retired at the end of last year, there still is a Vanderveer coaching in this season's NCAA tournament. Congratulations to them to be able to put together a fantastic season. They finished 20-15. They win the Big West, and they are headed to the big dance, and they're playing game on the 19th. The other play-in game on the 19th, the Iowa State Cyclones versus Princeton. Princeton has been admitted by the selection committee, probably the last team in. They finished 21-7. Both of these teams, Iowa State and Princeton, were 3-2 over their last 5 games this season. The Cyclones were 12-16 in Big 12 play, 22-11. They had some injuries and an incredibly tough schedule of who they were able to play, especially in the non-con, and then the gauntlet of the Big 12. Not at all easy for the Cyclones. Emily Ryan able to get herself pretty much healthy, all-time career assist leader in the Big 12, and obviously at Iowa State. I love the super sophomore tandem of Audie Crooks and Addie Brown. Those two young ladies are the heart and soul, along with Emily Ryan. Great emotion, great talent. I don't know if Princeton will have an answer for Crooks in the middle. Keep in mind, she had a breakout performance last year, and the NCAA tournament really put a lot of people on notice about her. I would look for Audie Crooks to deliver in that first play-in game. If that happens, then the Cyclones are moving on, and they will stay there in South Bend, where they would be looking at that game against the number 6 seed Michigan in the true first round of the NCAA tournament. All right. You flip to the next day, March 20th, the other play-in games that we have to keep an eye on. The first, Columbia versus Washington out of the Birmingham 2 bracket. Columbia at 23-6. They won the regular season Ivy, get in as a at-large. You got Rice averaging just shy of 18 points a game. The sophomore guard has been the leading scorer for the Lions this season. They are going to take on Washington, 19-13 overall on the year, 9-9 in the Big Ten. Both of these teams were 4-1 over their last 5. This is Tina Langley in her 4th season at Washington, their first year in the Big Ten. Massive challenge to go 500 in this league. This is the first time that Washington is back in the NCAA tournament since 2017. Congratulations to them. They are going to be in that Birmingham 2 bucket. So as they would win, then they would advance to play the number 6 seed West Virginia, who is not at all an easy matchup for the winner of that play-in game. Hats off to the Mountaineers. He had another great season, and the second season this year for Mark Kellogg in Morgantown. All right, the 4th play-in game, which is going to bump us into the Birmingham 3 bracket as well. The winner of this game is going to take on the number 1 seed in Texas, and that is going to be High Point, who finished 21-11 this year. They won the Big South regular season as well as the conference tournament. They were 5-0 over their last 5 games. They've got a 6'4" junior, Nevaeh Zavala. She's been their leading scorer and rebounder. Congratulations to High Point. They are going to take on William and Mary. And William and Mary, out of the Coastal Athletic Conference, as we said, they finished 15-18, but they won that coveted automatic bid by winning that Coastal Athletic Conference tournament. They are in for the first time ever. High Point What a celebration they had yesterday. Both their men's and their women's teams in the NCAA tournament this year. That place was packed. And what a great environment and awesome fan support that they had, because I think that's what the NCAA tournament is all about. Congratulations to High Point. Again, one of a handful of teams across the country that has both their men's and women's in the NCAA. So those are your 4 play-in games. Those are ones to keep your eye on. They've got to bump and they've got to play an extra. And then you take on yet a very difficult opponent in that next round. But the point is they're in. The field of 68 is set. This is what it looks like. Where does it lead us? How do they get there? The path is never going to be easy. I'm going to warn you right now, folks. You cannot pick your bracket with your heart. You have to pick your bracket with your head. Do a little research, understand the matchups, know there's going to be that. 8-9s are a toss-up, 7-10s. I always know there's going to be a 10 that can beat. Even in those 5-12s, someone is going to get knocked off. As we hope everyone stays healthy, no one has injury issues. And along the way, I think we are set for a fantastic 3 weeks of NCAA basketball. Well, thank you so much for joining me here on Locked On Women's Basketball today. You can find me at Missy Heidrick all the way on the socials. That's where it is. Make sure you follow this podcast at Locked On WBB, and then get over to the next hoops, because we have you covered. Bracket breakdowns, bracket previews, stories. We've got people that are fanning all across the country to different pods to be able to cover all of the games that are going to be happening over the next 3 weeks. Thank you. Be sure to come back and join us here. I'll be here next Monday to talk about all the things that has happened as the NCAA tournament marches on. We got to break down the wins, the upsets, and the storylines, because we know that there will be more. But then come back all this week right here. More college basketball breakdown, international news and notes, as well as WNBA news. There was a big trade over the weekend, right in the middle of Selection Sunday. Who does that? But it happens, so we will have it for you. Go see us. We've got you covered. Thank you, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. May your luck be huge. May you find your fancy and the lucky shamrock out in your yard. And I hope no one pinches you. Make sure you wear green. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic day and happy March Madness.